I can't take it anymore. I'm going back to my parents' house.
What did you say?
I can't take care of your father anymore. From now on, it's your job as his son. Ryan looked a bit surprised, but replied with an annoyed tone.
Who's going to look after our kids? What about my dinner? If you're really leaving, fill out the divorce papers first.
He must have thought I wasn't serious. His face was filled with scorn. Got it. The next day, I signed the divorce papers and handed them to Ryan when he came home.
Wow, you actually went and got them? Impressive.
Ryan looked shocked for a moment, but then quickly signed his name without hesitation.
Here, happy now? Then get back to taking care of my dad.
He tossed the papers aside and retreated to his bedroom as if nothing had happened. When I took my kids and went back to my parents' house, Ryan came running after me, crying.
Please, Emma, come back. I'm begging you.
Sorry, but the divorce papers have already been filed. I had submitted them as soon as I left the house. My name is Emma Harris. I'm a 40-year-old housewife. I'm a mother of 2 high school students and currently work part-time. I met Ryan in college through our mutual friend. We dated for 2 years and then got married. He was kind, dependable, and I truly thought of him as someone precious in my life. He proposed, we got married, and I felt like I was at the peak of happiness. I truly believed that happiness would last forever. But my hope was soon shattered. Even after getting married, I continued working. But when I became pregnant for the first time, I developed preeclampsia and had to be hospitalized. Because of that, I took maternity leave earlier than my plan. After giving birth to our first son, John, my health didn't recover, and I had no choice but to quit my job. When I quit, Ryan's attitude drastically changed.
Women have it easy. When they're unwell, their husbands have to support them. If a man said that, he'd be called useless. And you weren't even in some specialized profession, and you were just an ordinary office worker. So now that you've quit, good luck getting back into the workforce. In other words, you have no choice but to depend on me. So from now on, show some gratitude and make my life easier.
I was stunned. It wasn't like I quit because I wanted to. I lost my health because I gave birth to our child. Yet Ryan spoke as if my situation was entirely due to my laziness, clicking his tongue as he spoke. This was the real Ryan, the man I had thought would be a kind and supportive partner before marriage. He never once showed concern for my health and started nitpicking everything about the housework.
Why is this place such a mess?
I'm sorry. John was fussy today, and I ran out of time.
I don't want your excuses. You're a stay-at-home mom, so clean it up.
He would bark orders at me like that. With my first experience raising a child, I was already exhausted from waking up multiple times at night for feedings, yet Ryan never helped with childcare at all.
Taking care of kids is the mom's job. I work from morning to night. I don't have time for this.
I pushed my recovering body to its limits, doing everything I could. But Ryan never acknowledged my efforts.
You're completely useless now. You can't even work. You should really understand that. My coworker's wife manages the house, raises the kids, and keeps herself put together. And look at you, messy hair and no makeup. You're a failure as a woman.
He would throw insults like that just to belittle me. I wanted to leave him, but John was still so young, and I no longer had an income. On top of that, my health still hadn't returned to normal. Ryan knew all of this and continued his verbal abuse without mercy. He had no empathy as a husband and no affection as a father. But sometimes he would suddenly be kind, just enough to keep me trapped.
I'm sorry, Emma, for being so harsh on you. The company's performance isn't doing well, and when I come home to a messy house, I'm really sorry.
At moments like that, Ryan seemed like the kind man he was before we got married, and I couldn't help but have hope. I wondered if he had returned to his former self and if we could live happily again. Many women in similar situations fall into the same pattern. If only he didn't drink, or if he wasn't violent, he'd be a good husband. I deceived myself in the same way, repeating the same cycle over and over. Before I knew it, I was pregnant with our second child. Fortunately, my morning sickness wasn't severe, and I gave birth to a healthy baby girl, Chloe. This time, I recovered easily after giving birth, and the nightmarish days after the previous birth seemed like a lie. Even so, having two children made life several times busier. And of course, Ryan didn't help with housework or childcare at all.
Now you're healthy, but the house is still a mess, huh?
John requires constant supervision, and Chloe is still nursing.
More excuses. You're really just a lazy slacker.
Ryan kept repeating those cruel words, continuing to insult me. I had no expectations by this point, but it still hurt. My days were filled with sighs. The only thing that brought me joy was watching my children grow. When Chloe became a bit more independent, I decided to take on a part-time job. It was at a house cleaning service company. As the name suggests, my job was to clean clients' homes.
Seriously? You're doing that kind of low-level work?
Ryan frowned in disapproval, but it was a job with relatively flexible hours. With two kids, there were times I'd need to take sudden days off due to fevers or other emergencies. After considering all the options, I decided it was the best choice. Whatever. If you're going to work, make sure you keep the house clean too. I won't accept you cleaning someone else's house while ours stays a mess. I understand. I'll handle it. Just as I told Ryan, I gave my all to work, housework, and childcare. I was determined to gain a skill and become independent enough to leave Ryan. To do that, I needed to build a life where I could support myself and the kids. So I worked as hard as I could. I kept the house spotless to avoid giving Ryan any reason to complain. I also made sure the kids never felt lonely. I woke up early every morning and started my day while Ryan and the kids were still asleep. I saw Ryan off, dropped the kids off at daycare, and went to work. After working until the evening, I picked the kids up, went grocery shopping, and made dinner. After feeding the kids and giving them their baths, I cleaned up the house and took care of all the little chores. After Ryan finished eating dinner and showering, I bathed and cleaned the tub. I did laundry late at night and still woke up early the next morning. It was honestly tough, but I pushed through, thinking about a better future. Little by little, my savings grew, my confidence at work increased, and I was even trusted with more responsibilities and a leadership role. Then, something happened. When Chloe was preparing to enter middle school and John was entering his final year, I received news that Ryan's father had collapsed. Ryan's father was his biological dad, but his stepmother was not his biological mother. Ryan's father had remarried a younger woman after divorcing his first wife. She was 20 years younger than Ryan's father. I didn't know the full details, but apparently their relationship was the reason for the divorce. Ryan's parents divorced the year he entered college. His father was in his 40s, and his stepmother was still in her 20s at the time. It's likely that Ryan's biological mother endured everything until Ryan left home for school. As soon as the divorce was finalized, Ryan's father married his second wife. Since then, Ryan had barely been in contact with his biological mother. I only knew that his biological mother remarried and had a new family. Ryan never said anything about his father's remarriage, but he didn't seem to have a good opinion of his mother's remarriage. I thought that boys might naturally feel that way about their mother's relationships with other men, but looking back now, Ryan's family may have always had a tendency toward male dominance. Because of these circumstances, we didn't have much interaction with his father's household. Our relationship was mostly limited to exchanging Christmas cards. There were times when I wondered if Ryan's controlling attitude was influenced by his father. I've had thoughts like that before. Then, out of the blue, his stepmother contacted us, asking us to take care of his father, David.
So we're bringing Dad to live with us.
What?
Why are you so surprised? It's only natural.
Ryan shot me a sharp glare and continued in a condescending tone.
I'm his only son, and you're my wife.
But David has a second wife, doesn't he?
She's just an outsider.
Ryan's face twisted in disgust, as if just thinking about his stepmother irritated him.
She's the reason my parents divorced. How could I possibly leave my dad in her hands?
Despite saying that, Ryan had no intention of caring for David himself. So, you're telling me to take care of David, is that it?
Of course, it's only natural.
I can't accept that. I flat out refuse to take on the caregiving responsibility.
Stop whining.
Ryan shouted and threw the mug he was holding to the floor. It shattered into pieces, and one of the shards flew toward me. I quickly turned my face away and avoided getting hurt. But what if it had hit my eye?
I told you when you quit your job after giving birth to John. Since I'm the one supporting you, you need to do as I say. If you don't like it, I won't give you a dime. What do you think will happen to our kids then?
After saying what he wanted, Ryan stormed into his bedroom and locked the door behind him. It had been like this for a long time. Whenever something didn't go his way, he would yell at me and shut himself away in the bedroom. At some point, I started bringing my bedding into the storage room and sleeping there instead. It was far better than sharing a room with Ryan. But I felt weak whenever he brought up the kids. When I stayed silent, that weekend, his father finally arrived at our house.
Make yourself at home and take it easy.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Emma will take care of you. If she can't handle it alone, the kids can help too.
Ryan said that as if it was nothing, pushing all the responsibility onto me. Just as Ryan instructed, David treated me like a servant.
You're Ryan's wife. It's only natural for you to look after me.
David's stroke had left the right side of his body weak. His doctor said rehabilitation would help, but he refused to do it.
I'm not going to humiliate myself like that.
But the doctor said you could regain a lot of your mobility with rehab.
Shut up. You're just making excuses because you don't want to take care of me.
It felt like he was taking out the bitterness he felt toward his younger wife on me. He treated me harshly, as if using me to vent all his frustration. That's how it felt. Managing housework, taking care of the family, working part-time, and on top of that, caring for David. I had reached my limit. Ever since Ryan's father came to live with us, Ryan had barely been home. He came home late, stayed out overnight often, and frequently worked weekends.
I'm busy with work. I've left everything at home to you, so don't complain.
With that, he washed his hands of anything involving the house. Please, let us get help from social services. When I suggested hiring a helper, that was Ryan's curt reply. Are you really his son? Your father can get better if he does rehab.
But he'll never fully recover, right? So what's the point? Are you trying to make him suffer for no reason?
Don't you think it's a good thing for your dad to go to rehabilitation? Ryan glared at me.
Why pay unnecessary money when we have free labor right here?
When I heard those words come out of Ryan's mouth, I realized I'd reached my breaking point. I've had enough. I'm going back to my parents' house.
What did you just say?
I can't take care of David anymore. From now on, it's your job as his son. Ryan looked slightly surprised, but sighed with irritation.
Seriously? What about the kids? What about my dinner? If you're leaving, fill out the divorce papers first.
He must have thought I wasn't serious. His face was filled with scorn. Caught it. The next day, I signed the divorce papers and handed them to Ryan when he came home.
You really filled it out. Impressive.
Ryan was briefly taken aback, but signed his name without hesitation.
You're happy now? Then get back to taking care of my dad.
He tossed the divorce papers aside and retreated to the bedroom as usual. In the past 15 years, I had never once told my parents the truth. Ryan also knew that I didn't want to worry my parents. So he assumed, as always, that this was just another empty threat. He didn't believe I'd actually file the papers. That night, I left the house. Of course, I took my kids with me. My kids were teenagers by then and had their own opinions. I had talked to them about everything long before. I'm sorry. I don't think I can keep living with your dad.
We already knew that, Mom.
Me too.
I had held off on divorce because I didn't want to take their father away from them. That was one of the biggest reasons I stayed. But my kids understood everything. They saw how I barely slept at night because I was always working.
Mom, you don't have to hold it in anymore.
What?
You don't want to be with Dad, do you?
2 years ago, John suddenly said that to me.
I knew it too. Dad doesn't really care about us.
John, Chloe. Not only was John, but also Chloe was feeling that way. At the time, John had just started middle school, and Chloe was in 5th grade. The fact that such young kids had to say those things broke my heart. I felt so ashamed of myself. I always thought that as long as I endured everything myself, it would be fine. I told myself to hold out until the kids became adults, and in the meantime, I'd work hard, improve my career, and save up money. That mindset kept me going. But the kids had been watching closely, and they knew exactly what our family situation was like.
I'm fine without Dad.
Me too.
So, Mom, it's okay if you get a divorce.
The kids were old enough to say things like that, and I had no choice but to accept that reality. So, I decided to be honest with them about my feelings. I've been planning to leave this house once you both became adults.
You don't have to wait that long.
Yeah, you can get divorced right away.
Their mature words made me chuckle despite myself. Thank you. I understand how you both feel, but I need a little more time. I explained that I wanted to strengthen my career and save more money. So, can you give me just a little more time? When the time comes, I'll let you know right away.
Okay, I'll hang in there until then.
Me too.
My kids accepted my explanation and waited without saying anything until that day. Thank you for being patient all this time. All right, let's go. With just those words, both of them followed me without hesitation. I filed the divorce papers immediately and returned to my parents' house with my kids. My parents' house was far enough away that we had to take a plane to get there. My parents were shocked when they heard the whole story, but since the kids helped explain, they tearfully welcomed us. They scolded me for not coming back sooner, and their deep love moved me to tears. I quickly found a job in my hometown. When I explained my situation to my former company, they contacted their local branch for me right away. I had earned my manager's certification while working at the cleaning company. Even though I had started as a part-time worker, I had studied hard during breaks and passed the exam. Thanks to that certification, I was hired as a manager-level employee at the local branch. I didn't have to worry about making a living. My kids transferred schools without any issues and started attending a nearby middle school. I felt guilty for making them leave their friends behind, but they reassured me.
Mom, it's the internet age. We can talk anytime, no matter where we are.
That's right. Distance doesn't really matter with my friends anymore.
My friends even said they're excited to visit us sometime after I explained everything.
Even though I knew it wouldn't be that simple, I still believed that this environment was better for the kids than living with their father in that house. That's what I decided to believe. Just as we were settling into our new life, Ryan showed up at my parents' house.
Please, Emma, come back. I'm begging you.
He pleaded with me in tears. Sorry, but our divorce has already been finalized. When he heard my words, Ryan broke down and desperately begged for us to reconcile. When he woke up that morning and realized we weren't there, he thought we'd come back soon. At that moment, he had completely forgotten about his father and went to work as usual. But when he came home, the situation was a complete disaster. David, unable to move half of his body, had been left alone in the house. He couldn't eat or use the bathroom on his own. Enraged, David had trashed the entire house.
What the hell is this?
What Ryan saw when he returned home that night was a completely wrecked house.
Where did your wife go? Where are your kids?
Ryan frantically searched the entire house, but no one was there.
Damn it. This has to be a joke.
He kept calling me and the kids over and over, but all three of us had turned off our phones, so there was no way for him to get through. The house was so trashed that it was unlivable, but Ryan had no idea where to start cleaning. It was late at night, and he didn't know anyone he could call for help. In the end, he cleaned up just enough to have a place to sleep for the night. The next day, Ryan started calling around, trying to figure out what to do with his father. But he had no clue who to contact or how to get help. Of course, he had pushed all the responsibility onto me and never bothered to learn anything himself. The only thing he remembered was the name of the hospital where David had stayed, so he traced his way from there and finally managed to contact David's case manager. But since David's condition wasn't critical, they wouldn't admit him to the hospital. There were procedures to go through before finding a facility that could take him in. Until then, Ryan had no choice but to take care of David at home. Ryan couldn't handle David alone, so he asked someone for help, but she turned him down coldly. That someone was none other than Ryan's mistress. In his foolishness, Ryan hadn't explained anything and just invited her over, saying his wife and kids were gone. She eagerly went to his house, but when she found out what was really going on, she ran away. To make matters worse, while they were having a huge argument at the front door, the care manager, Ryan's boss, and a few coworkers happened to show up.
If you love me, you'll listen to what I say. I told you I'd marry you after the divorce.
Even the neighbors overheard Ryan shouting those words. For me, this was an extremely lucky turn of events. To be honest, I'd had my suspicions. Ryan fit the typical descriptions of cheating husbands that you always hear about, but I'd never had concrete proof. Hiring a private investigator would have been expensive, and I didn't even know who to suspect. So I had decided to ignore that and focus on getting the divorce. His constant verbal abuse, the violent outburst when he shattered the mug, his cold indifference toward the kids, all of that showed he had abandoned his role as a father. My kids were ready to testify about it. He forced his father into our home, but refused to help with the caregiving and even stopped coming home. That alone was enough for me to be confident that Ryan was at fault. It turned out that Ryan's mistress was one of his company's employees. A woman in her 20s, practically young enough to be his daughter. Ryan had always resented his father for having an affair with a younger woman and divorcing his mother because of it. Yet in the end, Ryan did the exact same thing. And somehow, he still saw himself as the victim.
That woman ran off as soon as she found out about my dad's care. She deceived me. She said she loved me. Do you know how much I did for her? Emma, please come back. I only have you.
Ryan shamelessly begged me, tears streaming down his face. Of course, just because he cried and begged didn't mean I was going back to him. Please leave. As I told you, our divorce has already been finalized. I repeated to Ryan that we were legally divorced. In other words, you and I are no longer connected. I have no obligation to take care of you or your dad.
Don't be so cold. You're just being stubborn, right? If you come back now, I'll forgive you.
Forgive her? Seriously?
John stepped out of the house and shouted.
Mom hasn't done anything that needs your forgiveness.
Exactly, and we'll never forgive you.
Chloe joined in right after John.
Get out of here now. We don't see you as our dad anymore.
Ryan flew into a rage when he heard those words.
How dare you speak to your dad like that? Emma, this is all your fault. You didn't raise them right. It's because you refuse to listen to me.
After yelling that, Ryan suddenly looked startled. Looks like you just revealed your true feelings.
No, I didn't mean it like that. It slipped out.
Ryan fumbled for excuses, but it was too late. He had blurted out what he really thought after being confronted by the kids. Ryan had always looked down on me and saw my kids as little more than his possessions. He probably saw his family as insignificant and unimportant. But now, my kids were standing up to him. Children grow up. He hadn't realized the truth and believed that shouting would make people obey, which is why he couldn't control his emotions and ended up revealing his true feelings. He thought of me as nothing more than a convenient, unpaid servant, so he didn't care about my well-being and had no problem dumping all the responsibility on me. If he abandoned his disabled father, his reputation would suffer. That was the only reason he decided to bring his father his home. But when I left, reality hit him hard. He realized he couldn't handle caregiving on his own. In his panic, he assumed he could control his mistress just like he tried to control me, called her over, and ended up being abandoned in disgust. I'll say this again, we're no longer connected. If you need anything, contact my lawyer.
A lawyer?
Yes, the divorce is final, but there are still things left to settle. Ryan's face went pale, and he began trembling. He was finally starting to grasp the reality of what was happening to him. Make sure to give us the details about your mistress, too. I'll be requesting damages from her as well. Now, if you understand, please leave. Ryan didn't say another word and slinked away from my parents' house. The long, hellish chapter of my life was finally over. As I watched Ryan's figure fade into the distance, that thought filled my mind. Though I endured terrible treatment from David, it ironically ended up increasing the compensation I received. The lawyer spoke with David to gather information, and David, thinking it was for his benefit, spoke freely.
Emma is useless. In such a small house, she should show up within 30 seconds when I call her. She doesn't even come running when I call her from the bathroom at night. She doesn't have the decency to sleep at my feet to be ready. She has no redeeming qualities and should be grateful my son hasn't divorced her. She ought to serve me more.
David insulted me at length, but his extreme and unreasonable words only strengthened my case. Ryan had me care for David under such harsh conditions while he was off having an affair, which led to an increase in the compensation amount.
I don't care what my dad said or did. I'll never agree to this.
But when I mentioned taking the case to court, he had no choice but to accept the terms. The infidelity case itself was surprisingly straightforward. After all, he had been caught arguing with his mistress at the front door in front of multiple witnesses. To top it off, a nosy neighbor who loved gossip had recorded the entire scene. They lent me the footage, giving me solid evidence of his affair. His mistress was one of Ryan's coworkers. She was well known by his coworkers who had witnessed the scene and quickly resigned out of embarrassment. She's apparently back at her parents' house now, but since her identity was clear, I made sure to request full compensation, which her parents paid in a lump sum. She was someone I'd never even met, and as long as I received the compensation, what happened to her after that was none of my concern. Ryan's affair with his coworker became public knowledge, but because it didn't cause significant financial damage to the company, he was allowed to stay in his position. There was no pay cut or demotion, but any chance of promotion disappeared. That was to be expected. He continued working in the same department, facing cold stares from his boss and colleagues. Continuing to work in such a hostile environment might be even more painful than losing his job altogether. But Ryan's downfall wasn't just because of the affair. During his argument with his mistress, he had been overheard calling me a convenient woman who would do whatever he said. He had dumped his father's care onto his wife without a shred of gratitude. Ryan's character had been completely discredited. People in the neighborhood were gossiping about him, but I wasn't too concerned. That house was going to be sold, and the proceeds would go toward alimony and child support. Since there was still a mortgage left to pay, not much would remain after covering those expenses. But with the additional cost of paying for his father's care facility, Ryan had no choice. If he couldn't pay, he would have to care for his father himself, which he absolutely refused to do. He could take care of his father for free, but he just can't bring himself to do it. One small silver lining was that, given the situation with Ryan's father, there was no need to pay alimony to his stepmother. When the stepmother found out that Ryan's father needed caregiving, she quickly left, leaving the divorce papers behind. It seems she had already found someone new. David was furious and said he would sue her, but since it wasn't clear whether she'd been unfaithful during the marriage, he had no choice but to let it go. They had been married for over 20 years, yet it ended so easily. But either way, it had nothing to do with me. They were people I'd never have to deal with again. Once everything was settled, I finally began a new, peaceful life with my kids. My parents invited us to live with them, and I accepted their kind offer. Their house was old but spacious. My kids were thrilled to have larger rooms than they'd had before.
It's a little old, but that just makes it cooler.
Can I really do whatever I want with my room?
Both of them were excited to decorate their spaces however they liked. Since the house was already old, I told them they could make any changes they wanted. It's a rural area, so there's plenty of space, but it comes with its inconveniences. By the time the kids become independent, it might be a good idea to renovate the house to make it more accessible for my aging parents. Until then, I want to let the kids enjoy it however they like. My work is going well. There are many clients with large homes who find it hard to manage housework as they get older. With my experience from the city, I've been able to offer helpful suggestions to my clients. When I shared ideas from my time in an entirely different region, they told me they found it very useful. Thanks to that, I gained their trust and was promoted to chief manager, a position with significant responsibility. Of course, work isn't always fun. But compared to those days, nothing feels like a hardship anymore. I no longer have to endure unfair treatment, and my efforts are properly recognized. I receive fair compensation, and now I can take proper time off. This, I realize from the bottom of my heart, is what it means to live a dignified life. Once things had settled down, I went on a trip with my kids. My parents came along too.
I'm almost in high school. Going on a trip with my parents isn't exactly cool.
Even as John said that, he stayed by my side. We hadn't been able to take many trips when the kids were younger. John understood how much that weighed on me, and even though he felt embarrassed, he still stayed close.
Mom, Grandpa, and Grandma are falling behind. Let's wait for them.
Chloe was always considerate and kind to others. She leaned on me like a child would, but kept an eye on my parents, making sure they were okay. As the five of us walked together, I closed my eyes for a moment against the bright sunlight. How long had it been since I'd experienced such peaceful days? I had spent so long struggling at the bottom of a deep swamp, but now I can open my chest and take a deep breath. This is my happiness. The words slipped out naturally. It seems I've become a little greedy for happiness, but I want to be even happier. When I said that, my kids chimed in right away.
Of course. After everything you've been through and all the patience you've had, we deserve to be even happier together.
I want to make my room fit for a princess. I'm definitely getting a canopy bed with lace curtains.
Hearing my kids' cheerful voices made me smile, and when my parents saw me smiling, they smiled too. Yes, from now on, all we have to do is look toward a bright future and keep moving forward. All right, I'll work even harder and climb the ranks. Maybe I'll become the CEO someday.
Great idea. Then let's all take a trip overseas.
Agreed. Let's go to Germany first.
It may sound like a joke for now, but I feel like if we try, we can make it happen. I really believe that. We're free now. We can do anything. With the wings we've finally earned, we'll spread them wide and soar together toward a bright future.